It's been our top international issue all day on CNN. We're told that a compromise with Iran on a nuclear program, its program, is very, very close. Secretary of State John Kerry's in Switzerland right now. It's the wee hours of the morning, and the diplomatic sessions are still going on. But no agreement in this country, really, on whether we should even be negotiating. Joining me from Washington, Professor Hilary Leverett from American University. She's the author of Going to Tehran, Why the U.S. Must Come to Terms with Iran, and Frank Gaffney. He's president of the Center for Security Policy and a former Pentagon official under President Ronald Reagan. So I'm interested to get both of your thoughts on just where things stand right now. It's very late. They're still talking. Hilary, what do you make of this?
Well, they are very close, closer than they've been in over a decade. But I still think I'm actually not that optimistic, and I think it will come down to whether or not the United States and its so-called allies can recognize Iran's right to enrich, its right to the fuel cycle under the NPT and as a sovereign country. I'm not sure the United States can do it, even though the imperative driving them toward negotiation is clear. I'm not sure they can actually seal the deal.
Yeah, Frank, I'm with Hilary here. I'm getting just this feeling they're not going to do it. What is your feeling?
You could be right. I think that one of my experiences from negotiating in these settings a long time ago now is if you want it bad, you get it bad. And the idea, I think most Americans can appreciate this, the idea that these guys are going to spend the night thrashing around with the Iranians and a good outcome is going to be achieved, I think is unlikely. But that's not because they might not come to terms on this particular point, but because the rest of the deal is lousy. A couple of really quick points. One is, I believe that the United States is being lied to by its president about what's actually going on here. We've seen the same problem, of course, with Obamacare. This is really national security.
Okay, well, wait a minute, Frank.
Specifically, this question
let
of whether
me break it down, because we'll go into this.
Back on.
Hold on. We'll go into this. Let me start with this point, because it seems to be the sticking point, and that is Iran is not budging on their demand to maintain the capability to enrich uranium. Major sticking point. So worst case scenario is that Iran keeps that capability. Frank, how do you see that?
Look, this is not the point. The point is that Iran is going to retain all that it needs to maintain an active and, I'm afraid, nearly complete nuclear weapons program. And the idea that these negotiations on one point or another are hanging in the balance misses entirely the fundamental, which is we cannot trust the Iranians. They've made it clear in the person of Rouhani himself that he's about buying time to complete their ambitions that have been underway for decades. We're kidding ourselves, and more to the point, I believe, as I said earlier, that we're being deceived by our own government. And no good deal can come out of this, certainly not from our national security's point of view, and I think that of the region, or for that matter, the wider free world.
Hilary, let me talk about Frank's point here, because he does raise a good issue of history, and that is it has been the policy of the Iranians to delay. And I got to say, it's sounding like we're seeing that again. Yet you say it's essential that the U.S. negotiate.
Yeah, I mean, I actually have real experience negotiating with the Iranians. When I worked for the Bush White House, I was one of the few negotiators the U.S. authorized to negotiate with the Iranians over Afghanistan and al-Qaeda, a highly constructive, successful negotiation, including with the current Iranian foreign minister, who is tonight in Geneva, I think, trying his hardest to get a deal. The issue, though, is not trust. We're never going to trust the Iranians. We're never going to like the Islamic Republic. The antidote to that, though, is transparency. You can't kill them all. You can't bomb them all. You have to figure out how do you get to an agreement that has transparency, and that's what the Iranians have put forward. To actually agree to, adhere to an additional protocol to the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This is what could actually get us to a negotiated outcome. The problem that people have, the countries that will not recognize Iran's rights under the NPT, the United States, France, Israel, and Saudi Arabia, the problem they have with that is that it would actually recognize the Islamic Republic as a legitimate power representing legitimate interests. The United States, the problem for us is that after President Obama's failed attempt, maybe even debacle, to credibly threaten the effective use of force against Syria, he does not have a military option. He has to do this diplomatically. And if he's going to do it diplomatically, the only way out is something negotiated under an international treaty, the NPT.
Okay, well, Hilary, let me stop you, because it is a conversation. So, Frank, let me ask you this. Is a military option, or what is the option if it isn't negotiation?
Look, we're dealing with a regime, and with all due respect to Hillary and her negotiations, this is an outfit that has for decades been at war with us. We pretend that's not the case, but it is the case. Despite her negotiations, they have been actively supporting al-Qaeda, including during 9/11. These are people who will make effort to deceive us, and it's not a matter of transparency. We know they're lying. We know they've concealed their weapons program.
Frank, I understand, but tell me, what is it you would like to see?
The alternative to it, well, I'm afraid the alternative to it has to be regime change in Iran. We have an option, which is to work with the people of Iran who seek that same outcome. And the efforts of the Bush administration and this administration to actually tie us to this regime instead of to the people of Iran is madness, and it is creating a much more dangerous Iran, and I believe a much more dangerous world. And this idea of a negotiated outcome, getting to some sort of deal, this is beside the point. If you're dealing with people who you know have your destruction in their sort of central credo.
This is what we were told
if you believe otherwise, I'm afraid you really don't understand the nature of the regime.
I'm sorry. We've come to the end of the time that we can allow for this. Thank you both. We appreciate it. Hillary Leverett and also Frank Gaffney. We appreciate your insights. The negotiations are continuing at this hour in Geneva. We will be back to talk.